Welcome to the first podcast for the GDCFL, which is a bowl-bound college football league. It's the second one here at Simnation. This is our first podcast. So I know we covered the WWCF earlier in the week, which is the older of the two leagues. This is, of course, a more is the second one, and it's not that much younger than WWCF is. This one has some interesting dynamic to it. If you'd like to learn more about it, it's at gdcfl.com. So that's Golf Delta Charlie Foxtrot Lima dot Charlie Oscar Mike. Um, this one, unlike WWCF, has a coaching prestige, and if you fall below a certain level with the team you have, you can be fired. It also allows you to compete to get some of the better teams. So, while we haven't had any human coaches fired yet, we have a couple that are on the hot seat, and it just creates an interesting dynamic to the league. There's some really good coaches in this one, um, and this is a fun league to play in. This where we are right now within the season is we are wrapping. We just wrapped up the regular season. We're now moving into the conference championships, and then of course we will move into the playoffs and bowl games next over the next few weeks. So, um, generally speaking, we're doing roll call right now, which for the next season, which will be the 2033. We've had 32 seasons already, so we're in the year 2032. And I'll kind of touch on in a second the history. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail though. But if you're interested in this league, drop me a note at simnation.us or drop me a note here. I am the commissioner of this league as well as WWCF, and if you're interested in the Draft Day Sports one, that's SNCFL. Definitely would love to have you. There's a lot of good coaches here. This one is an older title out of Grey Dog Software. Bowl-bound college football hasn't been updated, I think, since 2016. But of the two of them, like I mentioned before, this one is probably newer and dearer to me because it's a pure statistical football league, and you have a lot more control. Probably next week I'll just do a podcast focusing specifically on this title and how to play it and how to be successful in league play. But with that, I want to kind of dive right in. Again, not going to go into exhaustive detail, but want to talk about kind of where we are. Um, so regular season's over. We're now dealing with conference championships. I'll show you that in a moment. But if we look at the top 25, number one is Texas. They're coached by Mike Schmigo, who's also a veteran of WWCF. Ohio State is coached by um, Rob Benoit. Uh, Arizona is coached by Kevin Murr, who is a longtime coach. He's a very successful coach, as is Mike and Rob. Forget who. I don't think BYU is coached by anyone. I think they're on CPU. Mississippi State is coached by Mike Hart. So is Wake Forest. So 5 and 6 belong both to him. Florida is Harry Paget, or Harry, who is also the coach of Cincinnati. Maryland is, of course, one of my teams. So here he has number 7 and number 9. I have number 8. LSU is currently not a human control team. And then you have Michigan at number 11. In So I think one of the things just to keep in mind is when you look at this, and of course I'll bring up the page at a later point, but there's some really good coaches in here. Michigan is Phil Katz. Sorry for that, Phil. And then of course at USC you have Rich. Rich is the coach of USC. UCLA is Rob but not Rob again. Um, and then Arkansas's Cardinal at number 14. West Virginia's open, so is Alabama. Iowa State is open. Purdue's open. TCU's open. Washington's open. So really, as you get downhill, is all the remaining teams are open teams. But Mike has been number one for quite some time. It makes sense. He has the third hardest schedule in the league. Um, and he's done a really good job with that. Of course, he inherited it from John Leblanc, but he's really made that team his own. And I apologize, Ohio State is Max. It's a problem with having two different pole-bound teams. In WWCF, it's Rob, but here it's Max. Max is rated number 2 with Ohio State. He's done a phenomenal job there over the course of times. So before I talk about the conference championship, unlike the draft day sports title, the playoffs are determined by the winning your conference is one way to get in. So there are 10 conferences. Each conference sends a champion. And then there are 6 at-large bids. The 6 at-large bids are determined by the Grey Dog Championship Series points. So that will determine it. So unlike the other title, where it's only the top 8 teams and it's based on rank, this one is actually based on this formula. So you can get in if you win your conference. If you don't get in on your conference, you got to have the points here to win it. So with us just literally a week away from the playoffs, kind of if you play this out, is Texas, Ohio State, Arizona, BYU are probably in no matter what. Same with Wake Forest. Mississippi State, I think they're largely going to be in. Cincinnati needs to have a good showing to make it in regardless. And really, when you look at Florida, I think they're in. I don't see them, even if they lose the SEC championship, I don't see them falling out. Maryland is in a bad place, and this is an interesting thing with Maryland. Maryland is a perennial power. They've never missed the playoffs. This may be the first year they miss it, because if there's an upset of any of the teams, like Texas, Ohio State, or Arizona, I think that you could see Maryland drop out, because if Michigan beats Ohio State, well, Ohio State's going to take one of the at-large bids. If Arizona, for whatever reason, loses to, forget who won the North, but I'll have to look at that in a second. But if they lose in the things, well, then they take a second slot. If Texas loses in the Big 12 game to, I think it's probably going to be Iowa State, then that's another slot. So Maryland's got to hope that there aren't any upsets. If there are more than a few upsets, they're not going to make it in. And we'll kind of look at that real quick from a standings perspective. So, of course, Wake Forest won the Atlantic. They beat Maryland in head-to-head play. It was a very good game, a very close game. And then they will play Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech is not ranked. So a Wake Forest loss to Georgia Tech would be cataclysmic to Maryland, more than likely. Of course, Georgia Tech, and that's possible because Georgia Tech is coached by Dave. Dave is a very good coach. And it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. I think Wake will take it, but I wouldn't put it past Dave pulling off the upset. In the Big East, it's Connecticut versus Cincinnati. So this will make it interesting. Of course, BYU is already in. So that's one at-large spot off the table. So Cincinnati will need to win to make it in. So don't look for Harry to go easy on Connecticut. Connecticut is a pretty good team, but I think Cincinnati wins this one. But if they get upset, it doesn't really hurt the teams ahead of them, it would hurt Cincinnati the most, and they would likely not make it into the playoffs. So for Harry, it's a win or go to a bowl game. Ohio State plays Michigan. This is kind of normal for these two teams. They're used to playing each other. Of course, Ohio State has a lot more on the line than normal. They're undefeated. They want the highest seed that they can get in the playoffs to avoid a second round matchup against one of the teams that may be underperforming but are a very strong team. So you could end up with a Mississippi State, a Maryland, someone like that. And it's not normally a team you want to see in the second round. So I think that despite the fact that Phil's had a decent season, I think that you'll probably see Max win this one. In the Big 12, it's Iowa State versus Texas. Of course, Texas is in regardless of what happens. Iowa State needs to win it to get in. So they'll play pretty hard, but I don't see them beating an undefeated team coached by Mike. So I see Texas winning this one, and then Iowa State going and playing likely in the Cotton Bowl. In Conference USA, again, both these teams got to win. If they don't, they're not in. You have Notre Dame with one loss. I think Notre Dame is Kevin's other team, if I remember correctly. I'm going to double check that real quick to make sure. But I do think that I think Notre Dame wins this one. I don't think it's going to be much of a contest at all. So I see Notre Dame going into the playoffs, and it is Kevin's other team, and teams will have to watch out for that. Kevin's a very good coach. He's got multiple national titles to his name. Of course, most of those were at TCU, but I want to put it past him. He's got Arizona operating on a high level. Miami, Ohio versus Minnesota. I'm going to go with Miami of Ohio. Both teams got to win to get in, but look for Miami of Ohio to make that. Hawaii versus Wyoming for the Mountain West title. Hawaii's only lost once this year. They're traditional power in that conference. I look for Hawaii to win it. Both teams, again, got to win to get in. So the Pac-12 is on one side, clear as day. Arizona won the South. They're probably the favorite. They're undefeated. And again, that's Kevin's other team. Stanford, not one of the better years with 8-4, but it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But Stanford has to win to get in. Arizona does not. Arizona can make it in regardless of what happens. But I don't think that Kevin is going to be happy with anything less than an undefeated season. So he's not going to look past Stanford. Florida versus Mississippi State. This is actually a really good game. It's Harry versus Mike. I think Florida needs this win more than Mississippi State does. Mississippi State, I believe, is in regardless. But I think that they'll both go after this one pretty hard. It's too tough to call. Mike and Harry are probably two of the best coaches I've ever seen in ball-bound college football, so I think it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. I'm not going to. I think it's too close to call. I'll leave it though. In the Sun Belt, it's Troy versus Utah State. Troy should win this. They have one loss. Both teams have to win to get in. So as you can see, it's going to get interesting. Because as you look at this, Brigham Young is already in. They're not playing for the conference title. Maryland needs to have no. They think Maryland can survive 2, maybe 3 upsets. A 4th upset, they're not in. And then, of course, Michigan, like I mentioned, has to win. LSU is hoping for no upsets too, because then they got a chance to get in. Same with West Virginia. Those are the bubble teams. USC, UCLA also kind of in that mix, right? So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. There'll be certain teams rooting for certain teams to lose. Now, a dynamic in this league around award winners. When I show this to you, the Heisman, the Bednarik, and the Bill Bryan Award, we vote on those in the league, in the forums. So what you see here won't be who actually wins that, because it'll go through an awards voting process, and then a week from now I'll update the file with whoever wins that. So I'll probably just skip over those. The Davy O'Brien Award is William Anderson out of Wake Forest. He had a tremendous season. 3,860 yards, 40 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 171 quarterback rating. Of course, some people will say that he won it because Maryland had issues at quarterback this year. Of course, their main quarterback was suspended most of the year. But I think he just had a phenomenal season. I think even if Maryland's quarterback had played most of the year, I still think that he would have taken it. The Doak Walker Award is Joseph Jackson out of Arizona. This doesn't shock me. Kevin is a very good rushing coach, offense coach. He ran for over 2,000 yards, 17 touchdowns. Also caught 956 yards and 6 touchdowns. So that's almost 3,000 yards of total offense in 16 games. That's 12 games, sorry. That's pretty cool. And I would say that he's probably going to be one of the big candidates for the Heisman. The Bolitnikoff goes to Richard Wright out of Ohio State, 1,331 yards, 71 receptions, 10 touchdowns. He only had one drop on the year. Those are solid numbers for any receiver. The Mackey went to Dennis King out of West Virginia for receiving tight end, 55 receptions, 638 yards, 5 touchdowns. He had 20 key run blocks, 22 pancakes. That's pretty good. Actually, that's not pretty good. That's exceptional. The Lombardi went to Bernard Andrews out of Hawaii, so 28 key run blocks, 41 pancakes. He didn't give up a sack all year, which is very solid. The Outland Trophy went to William Carson, who's a defensive tackle out of UCLA. The key stat here was sacks and stuffs. One of the things I don't like about this game is if I were to show you the league leaders, I think that you probably would see a defensive end or someone who might have better stats. This game puts a lot of emphasis on stuffs and puts a lot of emphasis on fumble recoveries and other things. And what you end up sometimes with is people who might have better stats getting passed over. But, I mean, in real life that happens as well, right? So I'm not going to draw on that too much. John Bender is an outside linebacker out of Michigan, 109 tackles, 9 sacks, 15 stuffs. 4 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries, and an INT. That's a pretty solid deal for a Butkus Award winner. The Thorpe went to Charles Waddles out of Alabama. Similar to what I kind of said about the previous person. I'm pretty sure that if I look at this may be a cornerback that had better stats, but they put a lot of emphasis on tackles for the Thorpe. So 95 tackles, 1 sack, 10 forced fumbles, 7 fumble recoveries, 8 INTs. It's a pretty solid deal for Walter. The Groza goes to the best kicker. The best kicker this year was Alberto Sanchez out of Wake Forest. I wouldn't disagree with that. He made 31 field goals out of 42. Only missed 1 extra point. That's a very solid season. And then the Ray guy went to Fred Schultz out of Texas. 44.3 average, 40.6 net, 12 inside the 20. That's a pretty good yield. No blocks. And then the Tadatupu Award went to Stephen Strait out of Mississippi State. He averaged 26.1 yards per kick return. 18.2 yards per punt return. That can't be right. That's a lot of touchdowns. We're going to take a look at that one. If he had 13 touchdowns, that's like unheard of. That's 13 fair catches. He had 4 touchdowns. Okay, I was about to say it's transposed. Um, that would be a league record. So very solid year, and then of course your All-American team is Anderson out of Wake, Jackson out of Arizona, Roger Vargas out of Mississippi State. We talked about Richard Wright already. Barry Weaves out of Illinois, Guy Bridges out of Indiana. Your tackles, your offensive line was Wilson, Oliver, and Robert Miller, UTEP and Mississippi State respectively were your tackles. Bernard Andrews, the guard out of Hawaii, and then Edward Herbert out of Illinois, and then at center was Casey Baca out of Northern Illinois, and of course the kicker was Sanchez out of Wake Forest. The coach, again, we'll vote on Coach of the Year. And then on defense, what you see here is Anthony Estes and Michael Sharp are your 2 defensive ends. Estes is out of Eastern Michigan, Sharp's out of Syracuse. And then you have William Carlson out of UCLA, William Sapp out of Oklahoma State. They're your tackles. And then at linebacker, you have Alvin Mason out of Indiana, Ralph Sanders out of Illinois, Kenneth Montez out of Troy. And then at cornerback, you have Jose Serrano out of Air Force, Frank Warren out of Idaho. And then your safeties are Charles Robert out of Alabama, Derek Garza out of Northern Illinois, and of course the punter was Brian Hodges out of San Diego State. So if we kind of look back over the history of this league, there's kind of a story here. Of course, the league started, I forget what year the league actually started, but I could go back and look. I'm not going to. But long storied history with a lot of good coaches. So the first national champion was Freddie Reyes out of West Virginia. In 2001, John McCarron, really talented coach, won it at Stanford. And then Scott Kyman was actually one of the best coaches in this league for a long time, and he's since left. Kind of hope that he'll come back at some point. Maybe if Gray Dog ever updates this game. But he won it in 2002. It would be the first of many titles for him. The only time we've ever had the CPU win happened in 2003 when Wisconsin won it. Another talented coach is Nigel Hyde, who won it out of Florida State in 2004. Scott won it again in 2005 with USC. Caesar won in 2006 with Ohio State. Of course, now he's moved on to the SNCFL. And then Scott won it again in 2007. So over the course of essentially 5 seasons, he won it 3 times. 2008 was the first time we saw Maryland win the national title. 2009 to 2012 was the age of John Leblanc. John is one of the most phenomenal coaches that I've ever seen in ball bound. And he won it in 2009 with Penn State, and then 2010, 11, and 12 with Texas. Caesar won again in 2013. Maryland won it again in 2014. Caesar won it again with Ohio State in 2015. Maryland won it in 2016. And then Kevin got his first title in 2017 with Texas Christian. Between 2018 and 2020, it was the year of the Terrapin. They won the national title each of those seasons. And then Scott won his final title in 2021 before he retired. 2022 was Maryland was back and won it again. And that was the last time that Maryland would win the title. Since then, they've been in the title game multiple times, but they've been nowhere close to winning it. 2023, Kevin got his second one. Harry got his first one in this league in 2024 with Florida. And then Texas Christian, I know Kevin won back-to-back in 2025 and 2026. I think he probably would have won 3 in a row had he not retired. Cardle won his first one in 2027. John won his last one in 2028. He retired from the league at the end of that season. Rick Sullivan won his first one in 2029. Mike Hart won his first in 2030 with Mississippi State. And then Max won the 2031 season with Ohio State. Of course, he may actually be defending that this year because he's still undefeated. So if you look at the kind of go back to history here. So if you look at the career leaders of this league, from a yardage perspective, this may blow up on me actually. The career leaders are mostly from the University of Maryland. So you have Foster, Peebles, LaRue. LaRue probably is the greatest quarterback who's ever played in the GDCFL. Just take a quick look at him because he won 3 Heisman trophies. And when you look at it, he threw for a lot of yards, but he also rushed for a lot of yards. That freshman year, he threw for 7,000, rushed for over 1,000. Just a phenomenal quarterback. Johnson was a good one too, so was Carson. And then, of course, Rowan was the first non-Maryland, and he's the most recent update to this list. Rushing-wise, it's a little wide open. If I remember correctly, well, take a step back. Last season, we saw a new name pop up. But career-wise, Wooten out of Western Michigan, that was a human control team for a long time. Stevens, also out of East Carolina, was a phenomenal running back. And then you have Wall, more recent. So Arkansas has had a lot of good running backs as well. So, but Wooten and Stevens are two that stand out to me. Receiving-wise, you'll probably see a lot of Maryland here again. Mostly because Maryland for a long time has just been one of the premier passing game attacks. So Lee, Jones, Miller, Beasley. Beasley, of course, was a running back who just tremendous ability to get open in the passing game. Offensive line, it's a little bit harder. Not a lot of there won't be a lot of consistency here. A couple of these, though, are people who stood out for a lot of things. So a lot of this is based on key run blocks. If you notice, just because I like the passing game, the pancakes are a lot different. But you see Maryland, Stanford, Wake, those are your throwing teams that traditionally have people uphill. Booth was a really strong one. Outside of that, I think what'll be interesting to see this season is who wins the national championship. Kevin dropped out TCU during the season. Rick Sullivan, of course, moved out of the league to go focus on SNCFL. So did Cecil. But I think Kevin is in a great place with Arizona. I think Arizona is definitely one of those teams I think that could take it. I think Ohio State with Max, he's right there. You have Harry with Florida, who has the potential to go there. Mike will probably have 2 teams in the playoffs with Mississippi State and Wake Forest. Maryland has a chance, but it's not the Maryland of old. They've had a lot of issues this year, and they lost a couple games that they probably shouldn't have lost. The Wake Forest game, I don't count that because I think that actually Maryland lost the games they should have lost when I think about it. So definitely it's a good league. Lots going on here. It'll be interesting to see. By the time we do the next podcast, we will be in the 3rd week of the playoffs likely, and probably very close to crowning a national championship. I will say that This league runs on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. Again, great league, lots of good coaches, active base. I do think that if you're interested in joining a bowl-bound college football league, you have two good choices here at Simnation. You have WWCF and GDCFL. If you like the challenge, GDCFL is a little bit more of a challenge. WWCF has a great community. Again, phenomenal coaches. They'll both communities will do their best to try to help you with any problems you might have and give you tips and so forth. Even potentially playbooks to help you become successful. So if this is your thing, shoot me a note here, or reach out at simnation.us, or just let us know. And of course, if you want to see more about the GDCFL, go to gdcfl.com, and it will have more information about the league and the coaches, the teams that will open, and so forth. But I think that is it for this podcast. The next one we'll be reviewing the playoffs and kind of talking a little bit more about the history, as well as kind of talking about how to be successful. So thank you for your time. If you like this, then definitely give me a follow. Otherwise, have a great night and a great weekend. Thank you.